At the end of the day, when it's all said and done, it really comes down to our police and military that protect our freedoms, our freedom to think, to talk, to do, to try, to buy, to sell, to fail, right? It really comes down to that. And you see that in this movie that we're going to be talking about today, Braveheart. All-time favorite, one of my all-time very favorite movies, and there are just 3 lessons I'm going over. I could go over probably 50, 60 different lessons that I have learned from this movie. We're just going to go over 3 of them, and you'll have to watch the movie yourself to pick up all the others, okay? Lesson number 1 is leadership. There are 3 quotes that I'd like to just go ahead and read from the movie, and I've said them over and over to myself. Number 1, right? They're sitting before I read it. He's sitting in front of his army, right? And his army's like, "Oh man, I don't know if we want to fight. Let's just leave." And they're like, I would rather leave than die on this battlefield. And he says, "Aye, fight, and you may die. Run, and you'll live at least a little while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they'll take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?" And he's yelling, and all the guys just rally up, right? What a leader. Number 2, he's talking to the king, and he says, "You think the people of this country exist to provide you with position. I believe your position exists to provide these people with freedom." Wow. Leading up the chain of command, leading up to the king. And number 3, he says, "Men don't follow titles. They follow courage." Wow. What? Just so many excellent quotes and experiences, scenes from this movie Braveheart in leadership. You'll have to, like I said, you'll have to watch to see all the different scenes, right? Takeaway number 2, think different. Usually when we hear the term think different, it's related to Steve Jobs and Apple. They say, think different. We're Apple. Think different. Well, you could say think different, William Wallace. That's the main guy in this movie, okay? Wallace, it's a story of England oppressing Scotland and saying, "You have to be under our rule, and we're not treating you like English. We're treating you like peasants. We're treating you like slaves, and you guys fall under our rule," right? And they implement all these horrible laws on the Scottish people. Well, all these people, every time that they fight defensively. They wait, they're reactive. Well, William Wallace, he thinks differently. He says, "No, why don't we go on the offensive? Why don't we start attacking their strongholds? Why don't we take over this? Why don't we?" And he starts taking over their strongholds, and they're like, "Oh, shoot, we haven't faced somebody like this." He's thinking differently, right? Another way that he thinks differently is he's sitting in this battle, ready to fight, and he tells one of his generals, and they're having like an open argument in front of the other king, and so the other king notices that they're not on the same terms. Well, they come back, and he tells the other guy, he says, "Hey, take your men and pretend like you're leaving." He's like, "What are you talking about? That'll split our armies." He's like, "Exactly." And then come around and flank them from behind. And that's exactly what they do. They leave with all their cavalry, with all their horsemen, and the king's like, "Oh, look, they just abandoned their army. Let's go ahead, send everybody in. Let's just wipe them out real quick." Well, it weakens their army, and then they come around from behind, and they flank them, and they win the battle right there. And the last way that he thinks differently, there's another time where the Irish have teamed up with the English versus the Scottish, okay? and they're going head to head, and they're both running at each other. And he's like, "Hey," the English king's like, "Hey, just send the Irish. We have plenty of those guys. Let's just waste them right here, right at the beginning." And so he sends in the Irish, and Irish and Scots are running at each other full speed, and then they stop right in front of each other, and they're like, "Ah!" And they all shake each other's hands, and the king of the English is like, "Oh shoot. They just pulled some of us. We thought that we had a lot more guys." But literally, it was like half their army ends up being on the Scottish army, and he swapped them. He thought that they thought that they were going to have those guys, but they ended up not, right? That's a way of thinking differently. So many stories of thinking differently. Takeaway number 3, facing betrayal. You're going to face this a lot as an entrepreneur, just in life in general, but especially as an entrepreneur, you're going to be facing betrayal. So what do? You watch examples like William Wallace. What does he do? Man, there are just so many times where he gets betrayed. 2 of the most notable are, one, he's in battle, fierce battle, right? He's giving it his all, and he ends up, I'm not going to tell you exactly how because I don't want to give any spoiler alerts, but he ends up finding out that his own king is fighting against him in the battle. And you should see his face. There are like memes up on the internet you can look up that say, when you realize that not everybody wants freedom. And it's his face, and it's just total shock. Like, I can't even do it right because it's just complete and utter, like, you betrayed me. Like, how could you do something like this? And you betrayed your own country, and just, what kind of person are you? And he can't even like understand that somebody would do something like that. And the way that he faces the betrayal, like he just like kind of gives up on life and just like sits there, and he ends up getting over it. But that kind of betrayal, like somebody turns on you completely to the fact that they're ready to kill you, and they turned on your own country as well. The other time he faces betrayal is his own nobles of his own country turn him in to the English. And it's his own people who are betraying him, right? And he learns how to overcome this betrayal and learns how to just accept that there are evil people. He doesn't give up on life. There are times where he's like super depressed and really sad, but he realizes, no, those guys are going to make their decisions, but I'm going to keep on going forward anyways, right? So many lessons. My challenge to you is twofold. One, go ahead, watch Braveheart this week. You can watch it edited. I have the link below because there's a lot of stuff that you can edit out of this movie. If that's something that you want to do, I'll put the link below to the movie and also the edited version. That's the version I like to watch. And then also continue to watch one inspirational movie every single week. And as you do, you're going to become more and more inspired and learn about these great people from history and learn from their great examples, and you will become the person that you see in them.